Hi everyone, welcome back. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about time blocking and how best to schedule your time in order to get the most amount of work accomplished. So what I have is my daily productivity heat map. On average, this is kind of when I have the most energy to the least energy. Anything that's up here around the edge is highest energy. So from about 8:30 in the morning till about 12:30 is when I'm at my highest energy. It dips down a little bit. I can still get some stuff done. Between 2 and 3 is kind of when I hit food coma. I'm tired, kind of need a recharge break. This is when I can get a few things done, mostly admin work, and then I kind of hop back up another level, and about 4 I'm feeling like I can work on things again, and between 5 and 7 I have another burst of energy, and then you can see it kind of goes down. When I hit this point is when I really need to be in bed. I don't really have much energy to work on anything else. This level here is about a 5. This is when your productive capacity is the highest. 4, which is this area, is kind of a way station between, as Productive Flourishing calls it, creative awesomeness and merely puttering along. You're kind of in between. You're not full focus. I can get into the flow and just work without really thinking about it, but you can still get some things done. Level 3, which is kind of this level here, you can still get some stuff done, but it's not going to be high level, super flow, lose track of time work. Level 2, which is this level, you're spending more energy trying to keep working than actually doing the work itself. So that's about the time when you get distracted and all of a sudden start checking Facebook. I don't speak from experience, not at all. And then level 1, which I mentioned was like right here, that's hopefully when you're asleep. You have 0 energy and it's all you can do just to stay awake at that point. So this will kind of give you an idea of what my days look like. And the idea of actually completing one of these, which I actually got this from productiveflourishing.com and I'll link it down below, is to realize when you're at your highest energy and when you're not. I'm sure you've heard people talk about night owls and people who are more awake during the daytime. If I'm left to my own device, I probably actually more pick up around 10 or 11 and then I go a little bit later at night, but I've kind of been forced into this schedule just because of what time I have to be at work and what time I get off of work. So the whole idea for doing this is to try and plan the time when you're working on your projects and trying to push them forward for your highest energy times. So really and truly, as much as I can, I try to avoid meetings between 8:30 and 12:30 in the morning. This is when I can get work done. This is when I'm efficient, when I don't have to struggle to get things accomplished. This is like my best time of the day. And then kind of as we drift here into the later afternoon, this is when I'm better off, not really this time, but somewhere in here is when I'm better off having my meetings, either right after lunch or a little bit later in the afternoon, because I'm not going to get my best work done at this time. So this is when I try to schedule meetings if I can. An example is that originally I had my one-on-one scheduled for an entire day, morning to afternoon, just spaced out periodically. When I completed this, I actually moved all of them to the afternoon during this time because I realized I was wasting creative time doing meetings. Now, there are times when I can't help it. I have recurring meetings at 11, but as you can see, this is at the tail end of my productivity. So as much as possible, I try and get a bunch of stuff done before then so I don't feel like I've wasted the entire morning. So there's a couple of places where I got this information that I definitely would like you to go check out. The first one is, as I mentioned, productiveflourishing.com, and the second one is a book called Deep Work that I'm currently working my way through, and I will link that down below as well so you can check that out. But he talks about scheduling out your day in time blocks. So rather than just making a to-do list, actually scheduling time and setting it aside on your calendar, basically making an appointment with yourself in order to get things done. So essentially, when you're thinking of your time blocks, there's several different kinds that you have. So the first one is one that I've mentioned. Productive Flourishing calls them focus blocks. These are usually 90 to 120 minute blocks of time when you're at your most creative. So when you're at an energy 5 level, that's when you want to have those creative blocks. So I usually have one between 10 and 12, and I think I have it scheduled to like 4 to 6 because we get off work at 6. And this is kind of a questionable time. Sometimes I'm good. It depends on how late I've eaten lunch. So that's when I have my focus block scheduled. The next kind of block is what the website calls an admin block. So those are blocks of time when you're good to get things done, but they're lower energy. So it's harder to do work that requires like heavy brain lifting. Things like answering emails, doing some research. You're not actually producing work, but maybe preparing to produce work. The next type is a social block. So this is when you're at your best energy for meeting people. Again, that's kind of in this energy level here. You're not actually producing, but perhaps you are meeting with other people. That being said, if you are meeting with somebody for a brainstorming session, you're probably going to want to be at a higher energy level so that your creativity is peaked at that time. Because if you're down here, you may not have the energy to be super creative. And then the last kind of block he refers to as a recovery block. So that's when you're super low energy. You'll see I have one here in the morning, like when I'm first starting to wake up. This is when I exercise. That's when you want to look into self-care. So maybe you're eating, exercising, meditating, anything that you find kind of restores yourself. That's when you want to focus on. Those is when you're kind of at this 2 to 3 level energy. So one thing to remember is because focus blocks require your highest level of energy, you have very limited ones during the day. Again, most people only have 2. If you hit like another creative, like high energy cycle late at night, you might get in 3. Most people only have 2, however. So that's why you want to take a look at how you're scheduling your time and make sure that you are using your time efficiently based on what your energy level is. Now, when I actually filled this out, it was mainly just paying attention to how I felt throughout the day. And I think I might have actually even filled this out considering what an average day is like for me and not as I went, but just thinking about how I usually feel throughout the day. Usually between 8:30 and 12:30 is when I start having ideas and start thinking creatively. And then I noticed around lunchtime, I'm not as creative, but I have a tendency to work a little late through lunch because I'm working on tasks and I'm not quite ready to stop yet. About 2, I'm like, nope. I need to eat. I'm really tired. That's when my energy dips. I have a little bit of a recovery energy bump at 3, between 3 and 4, and about 4 I start feeling like my energy is picking back up again. So I just sat down and thought, like, how do my days usually feel to me? Like, when do I notice that I'm super tired? When do I notice I feel like I can conquer the world? I notice I tend to work late, usually by about an hour, because everybody leaves about 6 and I have like an uninterrupted hour of work at the end of the day. So again, that's just kind of how my body functions. Yours may look like this, it may not. But this is a really good exercise to figure out kind of how your days should be planned out. So we talked about focus blocks. That's when you're thinking creatively and producing work. Admin blocks, as I mentioned, are things like email, research. It's supporting the creative work, but not the actual creative work itself. Now, you don't have to be an artist or a graphic designer or anything creative to actually have creative work. This is when you're actually producing whatever your work is. So if you're a programmer, this is when you're writing code. This is when you are generating the code to do whatever you need it to do. And then your admin time is maybe when you're reading back through it. You're running it, checking for bugs, looking for things that make it better. But you've done most of your creative work during that focus block. Admin time might also be making to-do lists, responding to emails, maybe writing letters, things like that that are not like high peak energy, but you still have enough energy to put some good work in. Admin blocks are also good for reflecting on the work that you've just finished. So while you're focused and only working on the one project, you use that admin block to kind of catch up on everything that maybe has come up during that time. So this focus block is a time when you just don't check email, you turn off any of the alerts, and you just focus on whatever project you need to get done. You have an admin block usually just after. That's when you're catching up on the email that maybe came in, responding to things, making a to-do list for the things you're not going to get done right away, reviewing what you just worked on, make sure that it's correct and accurate and what you need it to be. So the next type of blocks, social blocks, those are for connecting with people. Even though you want to leave them for like a lower energy level, sometimes, especially for introverts, they're a lot like focus blocks. I'm an introvert, and having a meeting or any type of social activity actually will drain me. So I keep that in mind, that I don't want to do meetings when I'm at a super low energy level. One step up, I can tolerate it. Here, I might want to be working on some admin stuff, but this is also ideal meeting time. Any of these levels right there. And the interesting thing is these social blocks, if you have a lot of meetings scheduled during the day, you probably find yourself saying, oh, I didn't get anything done today. But keep in mind, sometimes those social blocks, those meetings, the things you have to be in, that's part of what you are supposed to be doing. So while you may not have actually checked anything off your to-do list, you've gotten something done, you've connected with somebody, perhaps you came up with a better idea together as a group. Hopefully your meetings are productive and hopefully something was produced out of that meeting. And then the final block is the recovery block. So these are important. You have to have these, otherwise you are just drained at the end of the day. Make time to eat, make time to exercise. If you have some sort of a hobby or something, something that just basically refills you and refreshes you, those are all part of recovery. Any type of self-care that you practice. Now, that being said, I talked about introverts, the social blocks being draining. For extroverts, sometimes those social blocks are something that fills you. So you may be able to schedule as an extrovert a social block when you're low energy because being around other people actually energizes you. So it's important to know what kind of personality you have and what refreshes you versus draining you. And usually most people have an idea. Just because you like going to parties, like being social, doesn't always make you an extrovert. I enjoy going out dancing. I enjoy being around other people, but I can do it for a limited time and then I have to stop and then I have to refresh. Extroverts, being around people is what gives them energy. So if you think about it in that sort of a way, you can figure out whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. The other benefit for having one of these heat maps, as they call it, the productivity heat map, is you can realize when you're low energy and kind of reclaim those blocks as a recovery block. So if I know I hit a really low point about 2, maybe that's when I want to plan to eat lunch. Granted, we usually 12:30 to 1:30, that's when our lunch is at our office, but being the owner of a company, I have a little bit more flexibility. So maybe, and this is usually what ends up happening, not even on purpose, maybe I take my lunch closer to 2. And again, while everybody's at lunch, I get another uninterrupted hour for admin time. And it's interesting, on Productive Flourishing, that website, he points out that if you exercise after having a creative or focus block, sometimes that can be super beneficial. Maybe it's getting out, taking a walk around the block. Just because of how the brain works, a lot of times exercise and movement can synthesize what you've been thinking about, and it's just the movement and the repetition will actually kind of stimulate your creativity sometimes. So if you've hit some sort of a snag, actually take the time immediately after and do some exercise, and that could help you get over whatever snag you've encountered and perhaps can push you back into your next focus block. So once you have this kind of mapped out, you can actually take just any sort of sheet of paper and then map out what your day should look like in terms of focus blocks. Pretty much every day for me is the same. So let's say I'm up at 6. And if we look here, well, I'm up somewhere between 6 to 7 a.m. So usually right in here is where I exercise. And you'll see I'm kind of at that recovery block level. And then that's when I get ready. Usually somewhere around 9, I'm driving. And you know how work usually is. You never quite get straight to your desk and start working. So 10 to 12 is my focus block 1. Usually somewhere in here, I'm just checking to see if anything has happened overnight that has changed what my day should look like. So it's a little bit of an admin block here. All right. Then usually 12 to 2-ish, sometimes 1:30, I have an admin block. Then 2 to 3, I have a recovery block. 4 to 5, I usually have another admin block. Then 5 to 6 or 7, I have creative or focus block 2. So this is kind of how my day looks. And then usually 7 and later is recovery. Every once in a while, I'll have an admin block. Usually that's when I'm editing videos or something, somewhere around 8 to 9. You'll see that it's dropped down here, but sometimes that energy kind of carries over. This is kind of an aggregate of what my average day looks like, and it just depends how much sleep I've gotten, that sort of thing. And usually at 10:30 or 11, I try and be in bed, and then I sleep until 6 or 7 the next day. So that's kind of what my daily schedule usually looks like. So you can see we have a focus block here, so I have 2, and then I sometimes end up having an average of like 3 admin blocks, and these admin blocks can also be social blocks. And then I have a recovery block from 2 to 3, and then usually 7 to 8, 7 to 9, something like that. And then 1 up here. So this is pretty much how my day looks if I'm blocking it out. So I know that if I'm trying to schedule my day and I have some control over it, that I want to try and keep my meetings out of these sets of times here. Sometimes I'm less successful because I have a meeting around 11, but I'm able to do a lot of my meetings during this time in the afternoon between 2 and 5. Hopefully that is helpful. I'm going to be doing a daily plan with me soon, and I'll show you kind of how I time block that out. But I did want to give you some information about theory and the background behind this and kind of how you come up with that information. If you liked the video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up. If you aren't already, please subscribe for more videos like this, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks!